We are in section 1.2 and we are looking at different data types. Now let's go quickly review before we do our example here the different types of data because we had two main types. Data. We could split this into qualitative data versus quantitative. And then quantitative data could then be split into these two different subtypes. Okay, so quantitative gets split into either quantitative discrete data, which resulted from counting, or quantitative continuous data, which results from measurements. All right, now we're going to look at example 1 and determine the data type for each of these data sets. So if you want to try this on your own first, that's great. Just pause the video right here and try it out. You can reference back to section 1.1 for a little hints with A through C. These are some data sets we already looked at, categorizing the variable for those. But if you'd like to either check your work or just do it with me right here, let's get into it. All right, so the first thing we'll look at is the number of basketballs sold in 1 month on Amazon. So this data set would have the different numbers of basketballs being sold. And so the fact that it is numbers that we're looking at kind of indicates that we would be in the quantitative data type. Now we just need to determine whether it is quantitative discrete or quantitative continuous. So think about the number of basketballs. Would we be counting or measuring that? So, I mean, I guess you could measure them by weighing the basketballs or something like that, but we would be counting the number of basketballs sold. So this is going to be quantitative discrete data. All right. We would tend not to say, oh, Amazon sold 20,000.2 basketballs this month. That 0.2 of a basketball, well, did they sell it or didn't they? We would get the whole number result from counting the number of basketballs. All right, next one, the color of foam board used for a school project. Well, let's see. The colors that we're describing, we're separating that into categories based on the attribute of color. So we're going to get words resulting there, different colors of foam board, white, blue, orange, etc. This is going to be qualitative data. All right, next, we'll look at the time it takes to mow a lawn on P Street. And if you think back to what some sample data points might look like, we had said, okay, maybe it takes 45 minutes to mow a lawn. Maybe it takes an hour. These are numerical results that we're getting. But are they discrete or continuous? Are we counting or measuring the amount of time? Well, I mean, it is a little tricky to think about sometimes. Counting or measuring, like we're counting the number of minutes, perhaps, but really it's measuring the time that's gone by. You're using a measurement device to do this, a stopwatch probably. You can start the stopwatch and measure it from there. And you're also not restricted to whole numbers necessarily for this. the the sample data points we were talking about, those happened to be whole numbers just because we were keeping it fairly simple by saying like 45 minutes. But we could have said, say, 45.2 minutes or 45.7 minutes if we wanted to be more precise. That would have made sense. So this is going to be an example of quantitative continuous data. Quantitative continuous. Okay, next. The heights of male athletes in the CrossFit Games, which I watched recently. This, we are going to get numbers here. We're not going to just categorize them based on words. So we are looking at quantitative data. And would we count or measure their height? We would measure their height. And decimals, things like that would make sense here. Whether you're doing this in centimeters or in feet and inches, this is quantitative continuous. Okay, we get a whole spectrum of results there. All right, the number of classes you're taking this semester. Okay, there's a big hint right here, number of classes. So it is a number, quantitative. Now, are we counting or measuring the number of classes, discrete or continuous? Well, let's see. Would we say, okay, I'm taking 3.4 classes this fall? I measured it. Probably not, no. We would count the number of classes and say, I'm taking 3 classes, because what is 0.4 of a class, really? I mean, I guess if you dropped out part of the way through, but we tend not to talk about it like that. So this is going to be quantitative discrete. Usually when you see the word number of something, that is a quantitative discrete data type. Okay, quantitative discrete. Okay, next, the cities you and your classmates live in. Well, how we would be collecting that data is the different cities. Maybe you live in Livermore, maybe you live in Tracy or Manteca or Fremont or heck, even out of state since we're online right now. But we're collecting city names for our data points. So this is going to be qualitative data, right? Our category is city that we live in. Qualitative. All right. And the last one, the price a house sells for in Pleasanton. Well, the answer is usually a lot. It sells for a lot. But let's see. This would be a number. All right, we could do averages, we could do mathematical operations, so it's quantitative, definitely. Now, counting or measuring, let's see. Well, would we use a measurement device for the price of a house? No, not really. You can't really measure with like a stopwatch or a ruler or a scale or something like that. You would count the money if if you had a sufficient amount of dollar bills, you could count out those dollar bills to pay for the house. You probably wouldn't want to do it that way and probably wouldn't have that many dollar bills laying around. But this is going to be quantitative discrete data. Okay, quantitative discrete. Now you might say, but wait, can't we get a decimal on this? Um, and technically, yeah, you could. Like, let's say a house sells for $875,000. Usually that's where we would stop. But I guess if you incorporated taxes and fees and things, you could get a certain number of cents at the end here. So let's say it's $875,000 and 37 cents. Um, if that's the amount you actually paid, then okay, that is a decimal, but we still wouldn't be measuring this out on a continuous scale. When we break it down, there's still a discrete number of pennies involved there. We wouldn't go any further with that decimal. You can't say $875,000 .3712 or something like that. That doesn't apply in that case. So at this level, we would have a quantitative discrete data set. Okay, now in the next video, we're gonna look more at data sets and determine their level of measurement.